Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this November 19th meeting of the City of Charleston Planning Commission. My name is Charlie Parrish. I'm the chairman. I'm joined by Vice Chairman Harry Bassine, to my immediate right. My far left is Commission member Bart Jackson, and then Steve Hirsch, and Donna Jacobs, and Jimmy Bailey. And my far right is McKenna Joyce. We're volunteers appointed by Charleston City Council and the mayor. And I know you join me in thanking them for their time and service to the city of Charleston. We'll run the meeting tonight is I'll read an item from the agenda to record. We'll hear from staff, present on the item. Then we'll hear from and any recommendation they have. Then we'll hear from the applicant. Then we'll hear from anyone that's in favor of the application, anyone that may have concerns. Then we'll give the applicant a chance to answer any concerns that were brought up. After that, we'll close the public hearing and any commission members will discuss, vote on, and move on to the next item. If you get up to speak tonight, ask him to the podium, tell us who you are, to represent someone, and where you live. If you have a cell phone, I ask you to turn it on silent or turn it off, which I'm going to do right now. If I forget. And I'd ask Christopher Morgan, to introduce any city staff that will be working with us tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Christopher Morgan, planning manager here at the city. Amanda Cox is the planner who works with our planning commission. She's here tonight. Harp is our senior zoning planner. Molly Connor is our annexation czar, shall we say. Who's been doing a great job. Philip Overcash is going to have some awesome facts and figures for you all a little bit later. And I believe we're recording the meeting tonight for our corrections.
And there's a few items. I know a couple of deferral. There's one deferral, I guess, under the zoning.
There's two under the zoning.
Okay. And you're doing a real good job for this. We have 16. There's two that are deferred, but she's got 16. So our goal of 12 was reached tonight. So we appreciate that. The first item on the agenda, the minutes. And I know those minutes from October 22nd, 2025. Any additions or corrections?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
on page 3 of those minutes, Anna Catherine Alexander is a member of the Preservation Society of Charleston, not the Federation Society of Charleston. That's that one. And I did have, y'all sent the links out for the other minutes.
Can we go, Ms. Jacob, and I'm gonna get you back, but can we go ahead and get a motion just because what looks like the item is that's on that one?
With that.
Is that correct? Is there a second? Bailey? Second. Oh, thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please?
I will recuse myself. I was not here.
Great, thank you. Just listening. Ms. Jacobs, you go ahead.
I diligently went back to the link. The only link I didn't see was February, but then when I went back to my notes, it was deferred, and I don't know that they were ever passed because I was not an alternate at the time, so I was not at any of those meetings.
We rely heavily on Ms. Jacobs for these minutes.
I decided I would go through since some of these were things that I had mentioned for corrections. The September 17th meeting, you don't list Sunday Lephasis as attending the meeting, but later on she's making motions. So we need to do that. On the July 16th agenda, I only printed the one page, but it's the agenda item that we voted on with the Star Gospel Mission and Dr. Marion Platt. Commissioner Bailey recused himself that night and did not vote, and we're showing, a unanimous vote of the attendees. And then, and I mentioned about the link. And what I might suggest, which would be helpful to keep these accurate, is on the City Agenda Center, there's two links, one that shows the minutes and the other that shows a meeting report with how everybody voted. We may want to just make that part of this minute record that we look at. Is that possible?
The minutes and I post the meeting report.
Maybe we could just get the meeting report too,
And then
to job these two together.
Ms. Jacobs, I'm sorry. And I'm gonna take all of this as a motion because saying I'm just talking and again, minutes can always be amended. And so this ought to be a formal process where you say, I make a motion that we correct the past minutes that you reviewed.
I can do
These
that. I
changes.
just wanted to put them on the record where they were.
Thank you.
And then make a motion that, because we've already made a motion to amend these in the previous.
Right, but if you amend them again, you need another motion, so.
Well, then I'll make the motion to amend them again.
with the correct changes you just
The
stated.
corrections I just mentioned.
Second.
Second, my list is saying, any questions, comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone in opposition? Great, thank you, Ms. Jacobs. Anything else?
Just about the minute report, the reports of suggesting that we add this. However we get it, this way we can clarify easily how people are voting to make sure they're reflected in these meetings minutes. And then one little detail that might be helpful, when the minutes are actually printed, is there's a header that says on each page what date it is with the page number. Because when I printed these out, I realized I had,
It's kind of confusing.
it's confusing that there should be a header with date and page number just to keep everything together.
So y'all, let me ask a question for staff. Did y'all actually, I guess you record these meetings, right? They're recorded, and y'all don't have, who actually, there's a clerk that actually types these up, is that correct? So if you'll convey these, I know it's tough work, getting minutes ready, that's a difficult, it's a pain in the behind job, but if you'll tell her, need her to really pay attention to some things.
Yeah, I'll coordinate with her in the clerk's office to discuss what you mentioned, Donna, and that you should diligently listen.
Because to be quite frank, I try to read them very well, but I'm not looking to proofread them. I'm mainly looking to match. Because there's times when I've been recorded as present and I'm not here.
Right.
Or somebody's recorded as absent, but they are here. And then recusing of votes. Those are probably critical for any kind of action down the road where the minutes might be needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I will definitely coordinate with them on this.
I learned a long time ago, you're not getting anything over Ms. Jacobs. I appreciate it. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Great. Next item on the agenda is D, PUD amendments. That's actually Circle CMS 301-000-0822, Council District 5, 3.25 acres west to amend the wedge PUD to include former right-of-way plan use development. Mr. Moore, or Ms. Hawk, I don't know who's Moore.
I'll start off, chime in if she's got other things. But this is one that you all have seen recently that was approved and went from Gathering Place to the PUD in this location a few months ago on the West Ashley Circle. And the development team was able to acquire from SCDOT this remaining extra unneeded right of way. And they want to incorporate that into the PUD, be the same kind of PUD it always has been. It just add the 3.21 acres that had not been zoned because it was previously right of way. And it would be an all commercial PUD. The PUD allows for retail, office, grocery stores, restaurants, things like that. And they would take advantage of this other developable area because you all might remember how constrained this PUD is because of where overhead power lines are, things like that. So this will give them a little bit more freedom in how things are arranged on the site. So we see it as a real positive here. We have just in here, and you all have in your packages what you present to you. Oh, you're just looking at the slide. Okay. Just the items in the PUD that were changed. It's updating the TMS numbers, things like that, the typical things you would expect to see. There was some discussion about drive-through lanes have a setback from the West Ashley Circle. These are not necessarily in the same kind of drive-through setbacks from like Floyd Drive that relates to a restaurant that's going in at the corner of Floyd Drive and West Ashley Circle. So that's a minor change on this too, while we've got it open, and everything else is just integrating the new acreage into the districts here. And here's a new overall development map. What you see here is a concept. This will probably, most of this additional area up against Glen McConnell will probably become detention area, and that way more commercial development can happen more at the heart of the PUD itself. So we are very comfortable with these changes. Here's the newest green space map. Again, very similar to what we've seen before. There will be trails around this pond, things like that. They'll connect them and trails there along the Beach Spirit, along Glen McConnell Parkway. So we've been very comfortable with these and recommend approval of these amendments to the PUD. And Anna, did I cover everything?
The only one thing is that the concept plan shows 6 lots, and with this addition of this one, will be 7.
Thank you both. Is the applicant with us?
Yeah.
You have anything you want to add, or you don't want to say? Okay, thank you. Sounds like a neat project.
My name is Crystal Ponte. I'm the landscape architect on the team representing Encore for this project. And I think that was a great representation of what that we're doing. It really is adding on some right of way to be able to create that better connectivity to what is that multi-use path there and allow people to really infiltrate this new development and make better use and more use of that multi-use path. There's a huge amount of vegetation that will be kept there. And not only that, most of that upper lot that you see there is going to be primarily the pond that he was talking about, the detention, as well as the walking trail connecting to the multi-use trail right out front, really activating that and giving them somewhere to go off of that trail. And so, yeah, we took what would have been a really funky shaped development and added in what would have been some dead space, creating more of a place to go and not only just go, but also go through and be able to access something. And so we thank everybody who helped us with it. We worked very diligently back and forth on all of this, and we're glad they're at it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out too.
Yeah.
Anyone like to speak in favor of this application? Does anyone have any opposition to the application? Not got to close the public aspect. Commission members, questions, comments, Mr. Bailey? Bailey moves for approval, second by Mr. Lassane. All in favor of the motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Mr. Lassane, signify by saying aye. Anyone in opposition? 7 in favor, none opposed. We thank you. Yeah, Mr. Hellman, you're here for zoning, I guess?
I am hearing up numbers 5 and 6.
Okay.
On this.
Why don't we- Is that a motion? We just go to those. By that Bailey that we.
If we need a motion, I'll make it on the agenda, so.
Oh. We're on zoning for now 5 and 6.
Well. And see, the other 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, you get all those out of the way.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna read the record zones 1, 2, 3, and 4. One is one parcel called River Road. I'm not reading all the tax map numbers, 19.74 acres. Fast zoning conservation was off on the county. Those two is one parcel off Maybank. And again, the owner of this and it's the city of Charleston and on the formal, it's 6.12 acres, fast conservation. It was overlay ODJO MHC in Charleston County. Number 3 is again city of Charleston, and then 4 is owner 1436 Bees Ferry, West Ashley 14.51 acres,
And it's number 4 is deferred, so.
okay, so number 3 being
So we'll
so
take
conservation
2 and 3 together.
1, 2, and 3 conservation, and it was zoned IN in Charleston County. That's really the district, never heard of it. But anyway, so that's 1, 2, and 3, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah. And so I'm just gonna take a couple of seconds here on these because these are significant things for the city that the city is undertaking here. So you all understand what they are. But zoning number 1 is also connected to zoning number 2, which is what will in the future be known as the Dale Morris Eco Park. These are gonna be stormwater absorbing areas on Johns Island that will take on some of the issues we've had in this part of Johns Island around Barberry Woods, which is over here to the southeast, and then comparable areas around that, and make those much, much better. They're lowering the level of some of the land, creating man-made wetlands, things like that, those trails, things like that through there. This gives you a sense of where this is the R4 that's shown here, and then this connects to a smaller parcel on the western side of Barberry Woods. This is all under construction now. So this has been moving very rapidly. We've got some grant money to do it, and it's going to be really a state-of-the-art thing to help us with stormwater in this area of Johns Island. So we've got that. And then we've got, and here's the other parcel there on Johns Island. And then we have this other parcel that we had got a swap with the owner of some land in that's adjacent to our Verdier PUD. That's right here. It's very, very low land, but we're planning to do affordable housing on these parcels here. And this will be land that we can use for stormwater and trails and things like that. So that will let us have more efficient and cost-effective development of affordable housing up here in Verdier. And we swapped it with the developer who will then do more commercial development over here off Verdier Boulevard, which will add to the TIF. So we will, do multiple things here. We'll keep the TIF funded with good commercial development, and we will let the affordable housing go in here in a more cost-effective way with stormwater on this parcel here.
Great, thank you.
So some really good things going on with those.
Would anyone like to be heard on items 1, 2, or 3 on under zonings? If not,
Move for approval.
moved by Mr. Singh,
Second.
second by Ms. Jacobs. Any other questions, comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's 7 of 6 opposed. So we'll take number 5 and 6. Guess we take those together. 7 to 12 South Road, TMS number 3100300007, 7.63 acres. The request GB through CC in Charleston County. Number 6 is 2 parcels off Edwin Avenue and Savage, TMS number 3100600132 and 3100300600.8.7 acres. Again, same zoning, GB. He was zone commercial, zone neighborhood commercial in Charleston County. Mr. Morgan.
And these are a couple of exciting annexations, bringing in another car location that's in the auto mile. That is a very good prospect for us to have in the city, the CarMax location here. And they are expanding their facility onto some parcels that are over here at Etowah and Savage. This expansion will allow for good storage of the vehicles that they have there. They also have a plan that will let their car carriers completely unload their car carriers on the private property, not in the middle of Savannah Highway, like we see all the time from dealers that will go unmentioned. But CarMax is doing a great job here to have a whole plan for how they're going to unload their cars on their property and keep the cars on their property. So that's a really good thing for us. And these have been recent annexations, zoning 5, which is 712, which is the current CarMax facility. And then here's an image of it from Savage. And then it would come in as GB, and then these 2 parcels at Etowah and Savage would also come in the city as GB, and they would have storage of vehicles over here. They're working on a very sensitive site plan for this that has stormwater taken into account, grand trees, all those kind of things, new sidewalks. So it'll be a good addition to the neighborhood. And staff is recommending for approval of these and happy to bring them into the city.
Mr. Brian Helm, you like to be heard?
Thank you, Brian Helmut, on behalf of the various property owners here. I really have nothing to add. Mr. Morgan has done his usual perfect job, and Molly Connor has been absolutely amazing in shepherding us through this process. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think this is an exciting one, as they mentioned, for the city of Charleston.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Anyone like to be heard on these 2 items? Not, that'll close the public aspect. Ms. Jacobs.
I just have one question. It's just for clarification. The Etowah properties right adjacent to it south, are those residential properties?
This
Plan south.
It's-
is
Yes.
this is a convenience store to the south.
Well, I'm talking in the back of the property.
Okay.
Back.
Over
that
here,
back-
these are residential properties, and they will have to have the requisite buffer up against between
I
commercial.
know
and
that has nothing
residential.
to do with us. I just had a,
Mhm.
I'll move for
Okay, Ms. Jacobs moves for approval on 5 and 6, correct?
5 and 6.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Just one comment. CarMax, thank you for bringing this into the city.
And unloading on site. Thank you very much.
So there's a motion by Ms. Jacobs, second by Ms. Hussein. Any other questions, comments? If not, items 5 and 6, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those in opposition, 7 in favor, none opposed. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you for your work. So, Mr. Morgan, obviously we could take 7 and 8 separately, I guess.
Yes, 7 needs to be separate.
Okay.
It's up, and you'll see, this is a kind of leftover from.
Well, let me just read 1526 Highlands Fair Road, TMS 2680000. I think, 1.38 acres. And request GB, it was R2 Charleston County, so obviously.
It's actually Berkeley County.
Oh.
That's pretty.
Okay.
So this was one that was a kind of leftover from the widening of Clements Ferry. It previously had housed a mobile home. That's what you see outlined here. Was in previous aerials, there was a single wide mobile home, so it's not a very wide parcel at all. And it would come into the city to be part of this general business area that will be a key commercial center in the Point Hope area of Clementsville. And that would be zoning. And here you see an aerial, they already have the roads cut in, and it's just a matter of getting it. into the city.
The symbol for PUD was on the back property?
So all the property to the rear is a PUD.
Okay, it's just sitting on
Yes.
top of it there, and I'm just want
Right.
to make sure
And,
there's.
and that probably should sit a little bit further over,
Yeah,
but
that's why I was asking, okay.
the developers did not want to open up that massive thousands of acres PUD to add this in, and we felt like everything that was going to be on it would fit.
No,
within
I'm fine, it's just sitting on top of the property, I didn't want to make sure there wasn't some other error that I needed to.
Would anyone like to be heard on item number 7? If not, then close the public aspect, Commission members. Bailey, Bailey moves for approval.
Second.
Her seconds, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 7 in favor, none opposed. Take 8 separately, 41 Coleman Street, MS 353120030.44 acres. And at SR2 is R4 in the county.
Again, this is one of the recent annexations in West Ashley. And you can see here, I believe this is in the settlement, right? Molly? Yeah. So coming in the city is SR2 based on the lot sizes. And you see houses under construction over there, views of Ashley River in the distance.
And anyone like to be heard on this? If not, is there a motion?
Curiosity question, where is the adjacent on that colored map you saw?
Mhm.
So everything there in the purple is in the city already, correct?
No, it's, these lots are now all in the city. So we're slowly working our way down.
It's fine, it's just, I was just curious, because like, where's our adjacent property there?
My dentist lives next door.
Okay, good. Good to know.
Would anyone like to be heard on number 8? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Bailey, second. Mr. Hussein, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 7 in favor, none opposed. I understand Ms. Connor is public enemy number 1. I just heard it at the PSC now.
Yes, she is.
No.
That's all. We
He's a
like.
hero.
Yeah.
With everybody.
Wonder Woman.
So number 9 is deferred, so I think Mr. Hussein said we could take 10 through the remainder together, right? Because I'll read them in the record. 1441 Sansa View Lane.
Sasanqua.
Sasanqua.
That's a familiar variety.
And I'm not gonna read all the tax ID numbers, but 11 is 257 St. James Drive. Number 12 is 1456 Pierpont Avenue. Number 13 is 1469 South Edgewater Drive. Number 14 is 1448 North Edgewater Drive. And number 15 is 814 Melrose Drive. It's more.
Yes. And as you said, I'll just repeat the zonings for all of these, but these are
R4, what's that?
all SR1.
Yeah, do R4.
Yeah, yep, and SR1, 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 and SR1.
We're good. Would anyone like to be heard on any of these items? Is there a motion that we take 10 through 15 together? Anyone want to make a motion to approve these?
So moved.
Mr. Hussein? If second,
I'll second.
great. Ms. Joyce, thank you. So that's a motion for items 10, 11, 12, 12, 13, 14, and 15 by Mr. Hussein, 10 by Ms. Joyce. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposition? None in favor, not opposed. Staff update?
Yes, we've got Mr. Overcash is ready to invite you all.
That's
a very interesting presentation on fee and lieu situation. at the
Oh, good, thank you.
So.
Bear with me while I change.
If you could make these a little interesting, I'd like that.
I think he set me up for not being as interesting as.
I wish they wouldn't have to pay the fee unless they just do what they're supposed to.
All right, so I'm Philip Overcash. I'm in the planning department, obviously, and I deal with the fee and lieu aspect of workforce housing, especially in the application process. So what happens is anytime there is a fee and lieu request or desire by a developer on an MU workforce housing zoned property, they would submit this application to the zoning or well, to our department. I would review it and so I'm in the best position, I think, to be able to pull together some stats, some metrics, you know, and kind of just indicate some trends on it. So that's what I'll be going over tonight. I think the last time I presented on this topic was about, well, maybe 2.5 years ago, I think 2023, and then I think in 2021 as well. But what I'm going to do is go over really quickly, just a brief timeline of the MU workforce housing zoning for the benefit of all members, especially if you're newer to the commission. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me. I think we can be pretty informal at this point in the meeting. So it's mixed use workforce housing, and there's two zoning types. There's a 1 and a 2. The 1 number corresponds with the uses allowed in the zone district. So the 1 corresponds with limited business type uses and hours of operation, that sort of thing. And the 2 designates general business type uses. So if you see those differences in mixed use workforce housing zonings, that's the only difference. Everything else is the same. Back in 2003, the city created mixed use districts, you know, and these were designed to encourage developers to, you know, provide, you know, a diversity of uses, you know, especially on the street, you know, kind of ground level uses, you know, that are fronting directly, you know, onto the sidewalk, you know, and, you know, just allowed developers, you know, encourage developers, you know, there's some things in the district that encouraged different types of uses by giving some parking breaks, you know, a little bit less of a requirement on parking if you had a mix. But those districts quickly evolved within about 3 years to including workforce housing specifically. And the idea was to encourage workforce housing, obviously. But in this case, because, and this is an aspect I think we've talked about before, but just given South Carolina state law and what we interpret as preventing what we call inclusionary housing zoning tactics, where we can't force a property owner or developer to include housing of a certain type, and in this case, workforce housing. So what happens is it's a completely voluntary process. So if you were to voluntarily rezone your property into one of the workforce housing, it would be considered outside of that kind of inclusionary zoning. So we're not forcing the developer to do so. There are, of course, incentives, for the workforce housing, and that is unlimited density. And then there's also still some parking incentives as well. That was done in 2006, creating the workforce housing aspect. I think at the time, the percentage for requiring workforce housing based on the total number of units on a property, and of course, this only applies to residential aspects. It was 15%, and I think it was for, I think it was only 20-year sort of term for that. So those types of things changed over the years, and I'll address those in a second. So in 2017, and I'll just mention, I don't think this is in the slide, but prior to 2017, we didn't have a whole lot going on as far as like a multifamily housing development on the peninsula, which is primarily where this is targeted. But prior to 2017, I think we had 36 workforce housing units built within the developments. It was viewed, I think, at that time that things were moving fairly slowly with this, with encouraging workforce housing. So, it was in 2017, and I think, we did study this a good bit, in 2017 or 2016, really. But providing a fee in lieu option. So, as you would imagine, a lot of developers were on board with this option and highly encouraging it and, lobbying city council and others to adopt it. So when it was adopted, there were some grandfathering provisions. So, at the time, there were already a lot of properties zoned MU workforce housing. Those properties would have been grandfathered under a lower rate if they hadn't already developed. And that rate was $3.40 per square foot applied to the calculation for, and this is gross square foot of the entire development. So that would be the calculation for the total fee in lieu of providing on-site housing. And so, this was an option. Obviously, the city wasn't forcing either you to provide on-site or to do the fee in lieu, completely voluntary. So the $5.10 was the cost per square foot if you were not already grandfathered. So that's the only distinction there. So after several years, well, I'll say that the fee in lieu payments, once we collected those payments, it went into a fund that the housing department, city's housing department managed, and of course would go to city council with kind of spending that funding on various projects. And just as a indication of what we go through for the applications for a fee in lieu, if you're just providing workforce housing on site based on the required number of units, you would not need to go through this step. But if you were to opt for the fee in lieu, you would submit to the city floor plans, similar to what you would see on the left, so that we can verify square footage that they are using to calculate. And then on the right is just the form that we would use. It's pretty basic, but it does indicate, the number of units that they are required to have, percentage, of units, price per square foot, and then the total square footage of the development, so that we can get everything on one page and then signed by the designer in charge of basically the project, the development. Once all that was checked over and approved, they would pay the city a fee and therefore not be required to provide on-site.
And you probably don't cover this, but what percent of people, and again, if you're gonna do it, I don't mean to jump ahead, what percent of people are taking the fee in lieu versus the next bullet?
So so after a while, we did, see a trend begin that, and this, this was after, a fairly protracted recession we had back in 8, 9, 10. Things really started heating up on the peninsula, especially kind of middle of the peninsula. A lot of housing projects that we hadn't seen before, were starting to crop up. So, this fee in lieu probably supercharged some of that. And so we did start to see a lot of units, a lot of developments. And as you can see here, by 2021, we had out of 16 projects, 14 opted for the fee in lieu. Obviously, that's a pretty high percentage. So that was 2021. So, well, also, as you can see, that's, 380, that's equivalent of 389 units that we would have had, in the downtown area that were not provided. This, was looked at, or considered a concern. So we did a pretty extensive study in 21. I believe we came to y'all, and presented some data. And eventually city council did, increase the fee, or at least the calculation, so that it was sort of a tiered system where if you provided any on-site, it made any optional fee in lieu go down sort of exponentially. So the more you provided on-site, the less you would pay in fee for other units. So the idea obviously was to encourage more on-site units. If you didn't provide any on-site units, the fee in lieu was much, much higher than what it had been prior to 2021. Just a couple of notes. We, as of today, we've collected about 11.5 million fee in lieu, and spent over 10 million of that or so, mostly outside of the peninsula, but some of that has been spent on the peninsula.
Can you tell us how many of the 389 units that weren't built would have been on the peninsula otherwise?
If they didn't do the fee and loan, they built them.
Oh, they would have been.
Yeah, all of them.
All of
They
them?
would have been.
Yeah.
Those are all peninsula projects.
That's what I
So,
thought.
well, as of right now, the MU workforce housing is exclusively peninsula zoning. However, we are looking at it for the first time, I think this year, at a location or two outside the peninsula. And this, of course, would be
Folly, MU?
the 35, it's MU, but not an MU workforce housing.
Okay, but it is MU.
Yes.
Understandably, that 10 million gets stretched a lot further off the peninsula.
Yes.
If they tried to do that, wouldn't we be anywhere close to the 300 unit?
Yeah, I think I think the point is where, I mean, that reinforces the point, I think. We need it where we need it.
So since 2021, we've had, and this is, the kind of the point at which we changed things up a little bit for more on site. We have had about 15 rezonings, or exactly 15 rezonings. And so that, it's only been a few years. And at the same time, we did see a bit of a slowdown, not just on the peninsula, but, overall, multifamily housing, which is primarily, of course, what, developments in the MU workforce housing do. But yeah, so we haven't had any, what we would call a third generation project, actually go to completion or even really get very far at this point. It does generally take a number of years to go from even like just say rezoning and then stepping through the TRC process and then construction for a couple of years. So it might take 5 or 6 years. We do have dozens of properties on the peninsula that were zoned, as far back as probably 2006, that have not had any development on them yet. And we kind of keep track of those. So what you see on this table here is just a handful of projects, or it's just really just locations that have rezoned. Most of these don't really have a project necessarily yet. Going through, kind of any final stages or maybe not even TRC yet. But to note, we do have one, I think that might be getting closer to, TRC and then getting permits, and that's 518 East Bay, and that's Washington, Charlotte Street. That's over by the Mullups on East Bay. And part of that, part of a building was demolished a couple of years ago. And I think they're moving along. They have changed, the developers have changed their scope on the project. And I think even the buyers have changed a couple of times on this project. So they have been moving fairly slowly since the rezoning back in 2022.
The columns that say no.
I'm sorry, those, I just pulled this last part of the table. Those correspond to the generations, and they correspond to dates as to when they had received the TRC or when we received the TRC
20% is the workforce housing percentage.
That is the required percentage, and then the 30 is the number of years for this. Yeah, but I'll note too that the last changes in 2021 to the fee and lieu, or to the workforce housing ordinance, was also changed the percent that we require to 20%, or actually I think it just changed. I think we had already moved up to 20% by then, maybe in 2019, but the 30 years we did kind of increase at that time in 2021. And let's see, so another one of note that might be getting closer to getting through TRC is 162 Ashley. This is in the MUSC area, and you all saw that just last year as a rezoning. And that it wouldn't be that many units, but I think they were looking at 30 something.
Is that the old bookstore property?
Yes.
Yes.
So they are moving forward, and probably further along than any other projects on the list here. So this is just showing back in February 23 what I think was presented. The 10 million number is how much we'd collected at that time, and we were expecting another, close to $1 million very soon at that time. So this is an updated table. So we have collected that amount basically that we were projecting, and so now we've got 11.5 million. Collecting another 500,000, this year maybe, but could be early next. And this is the lifestyle communities project that's happening on Line Street that you've seen going up over the past probably 4 or 5 years. It's been a while.
A very, very slow project.
Yeah.
Oof.
Tell me about it. I remember the last discussion on increasing the fee and so forth. I think I know the answer, but we didn't put any sort of inflationary type adjuster on it. It's a fixed, so it doesn't account for the fact that cost to build of way up
Right.
since 2021.
Right.
So there's less incentive today
Mm-hmm.
to actually build the units than there was then. At least pure financial.
This table here is a number of projects properties, maybe some don't have project yet, but this is just projections of how much we could collect if all these properties did develop some, in the next 10, 15 years. So, it could be another 23 million or so based on what their generation was with their grandfathering, and what percentage, they had to pay, what price per square foot they would have had to pay.
Well, with Mr. Bailey's comment, is there something the city's coming up with to recommend an increase in the fee?
No, our focus for affordable housing really is on things like the 3,500 units that we're doing on a combination of city land and housing authority land and some private land. That's taken a big part of it, of our emphasis right now. The market has turned way down. We are not, we used to see all the construction cranes, things like that. Right now, the only construction cranes are for MUSC. So the market is way down. I had a developer person telling me the other day that none of the projects that you're seeing here are going to get built in the current situation because of financing issues, construction costs. The amount of money these projects have invested in land is just much higher than in other cities. So, it's going to take a while for us to I think we've kind of slumped out a little bit. We're going to need to
There
turn
was an
around.
interesting article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about how LA has turned this around to really push developers that normally only do market rate into affordable housing. And most of it has to do with process. In other words, they've got a lot more process than we do. We've already kind of streamlined our process, but that might be a better place to look is because one of the incentives we can give a developer is time. So and I think y'all discussed this before, moving projects, affordable housing to the head of the line to get them out and ready so they don't tie up their financing. Maybe instead of this, they find cumbersome because they got to do numbers. If you have a time incentive where you guarantee to be out through the process in, let's just say 90 days, that's huge for a developer. And this whole article was focused around how LA has done that with their process to guarantee that. And they're finding developers moving away from market rate development into affordable housing development. Just something to.
And that's one of the things, again, with
we might want to look at it.
With the 3,500 units we're working to do, the idea behind that is that they will be presented to the development community in kind of a RFP format with essentially like a permit in hand.
Yeah,
So that if you bid on this particular site for a package, you can then get all the materials that have led to the permit. And all you have to really do is build it, finance it and build it.
This is what I'm talking about. It's like, maybe we should look at process just as much as these other things.
The thought occurs to me that, and Mr. Bailey, you know this better than me, but if you look at the business cycle in terms of lending markets, in 2017, when this was first done, they were financing hotels, but they weren't really financing multifamily. And then around about the time that we changed the law, the spigots opened up and they started financing multifamily. And then there was that 4 or 5 year period and that was when all the cranes started going up and all the apartments got built up on the Upper Peninsula. And then now that, cost of money's gone way up in the last few years, now the cranes are going down and, but it's doing the fee in lieu in 2017 coincided with it. It was like off to the races, they took advantage of it. I think we were just a little too late in, raising the prices or tiering the system.
Yeah, and
It was the right call.
I don't have an opinion yet on whether or not what we have now is right or wrong or whatever, but my guess is that costs over the last 5 years have perhaps wiped out the entire increase that was put in place. And we may be further behind than we were when we made that change, just because of the rising costs. But
that's what's happening with transportation. We can't even get contractors to bid
Yeah.
because but funded it at this level. By the time I got through all the process, things are triple. And that's why some roads are not being accommodated because they just can't match anymore situations.
Cost of goods and the cost of financing is just.
And finding the
right now.
workers.
Now, this is, of course, a incentive-based zoning, so, the idea was to encourage more housing. Now, you don't really have much to base your incentives on unless you're in a desirable area like the peninsula, which we were kind of banking on. And of course, the type of housing as well, which was, multifamily, high-rise type thing, is something that, was almost exclusively happening. And, affordable housing was happening in a much smaller format. Some of it was, multifamily apartments, but a lot of it was more like townhomes and, some single family even. But on the peninsula though, you could look at it though as if the necessary density for creating multifamily on the peninsula based on, the costs, is basically unlimited density. We also have certain, restrictions, height and, other things, but, parking especially. But if we were going to incentivize something, having the increased density was really the only thing we had, GB zoning, for instance, one of the highest densities we have in the city as a base zoning only goes up to about 24, 25 units an acre, not nearly enough for a downtown area. So this being an incentivized, that was kind of the only thing we had to hang our hat on, was the increased density. If we were to get rid of that completely across zone districts, not of course in neighborhoods, obviously in appropriate areas, I'm wondering if that would make a difference, or overall just for developers, we didn't even incentivize.
But it looks to me like there's a whole lot of, I mean, if the business cycle turns, there's a whole lot of people that are grandfathered in with these pretty low fees.
Yeah.
So, that's going to take a while to work its way through the system, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point that, we haven't seen a whole lot of rezonings into these districts. And, probably part of it probably is the cost, since COVID. And a good indication of that might be that a lot of the districts that, had been rezoned in 2012, haven't also been, and we have a real scarcity of land right now. So, which is also contributing to the issues. And we're fairly low density in a lot of parts of the peninsula.
Mr. Overcast, you go ahead. What else?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to indicate, just a MU workforce housing rezonings by year table chart. As you can see, since we instituted in 2006 all the way up to now, you can see the number of rezonings we had per year. We're somewhat steady up till about 2017, jumped up right after well, it was already going up, but 2017 went up. Who knows? I mean, if this was a result of any decisions the city made, or if this was just a result of the market, but then kind of went back down. And as you can see now, we haven't seen too terribly many in the past 3 years. We haven't had one yet this year. So just as something to think about as perhaps an indicator. I think this is a map indicating kind of where MU districts kind of cluster. We obviously try to keep them in appropriate places where a mix of uses is encouraged and wanted. And that's along kind of a King and Meeting corridor, kind of upper and mid peninsula. It doesn't really go too far down, the more historic parts of the peninsula. This was just an indication of some of the stuff that the housing department has spent money on, that was collected through the fee and lieu. Some of the other revenue, there are other sources of revenue. One that we might start collecting here more robustly would be, since I think it was 2019 that we instituted some changes to the accommodations overlay zone, including a required fee if you were sort of displacing or potentially displacing housing on a hotel development. And so as you went through the BZA zoning board of appeals exception process for your accommodations, you would have to potentially calculate what kind of housing fee you would pay. And we have had a good number of, since 2019, a good number of hotels approved not really built. And so we haven't really collected much in the way of accommodations, housing fee. It'll have a process similar to the fee in lieu though.
Do we have any data along those same lines? Do we have any data on how many housing units have been displaced with short-term rentals?
I don't know that we have data, but we definitely have, I mean, displacement data, but we definitely have numbers of units and we can make some assumptions. No, yeah, I mean, it's something that we can look at, obviously STRs, it's been a concern for over a decade now. And
Especially when the new ones are building it and they convert them right to STRs, that's
great.
yeah, those. And you could probably just gather all that data by just going into the Canberra STR as a model and looking at how much that has converted.
Right.
Yeah,
And
again,
it is unfortunate because it's sitting right next to MUSC, which needs a lot of students and other housing. So it's an unfortunate change there.
the Canonboro, Elliotboro is overwhelmingly where those are. There's 640 approved short-term rentals there, and that doesn't count how many bedrooms.
So
or
are we
things.
assuming that's a one-to-one displacement?
I wouldn't
I
think so.
wouldn't say it was displacement. These were
They're all
units that were
commercial
not
design.
actively used. Yeah, they were not actively
Yeah.
used. But for example, in all of West Ashley, there's 72 short-term rentals. In all of Johns Island, there are 3. In all of
And-
James Island, there are 43. Daniel Island, there are 14.
Can you just send us those numbers, please?
That's, I need to check in with Jason, but yeah, I'm looking at a slide. I took a picture of a figure, a set of figures he has.
Yeah, as Harry pointed out, some of that is commercial zoning, or actually a lot of it is because in the STR
Had to be
overlay
commercial.
zone in Canberra, Elliotboro, as you're well aware.
Oh, we had some-
Anytime we get a rezoning request, they're always wanting to go commercial because that's what's required.
That's what I'm talking about displacement, because we had several, back in my very first night, I remember you said buckle up because we were doing 218 Ashley Avenue, which they wanted to change that whole venue, and then they tried to get everybody else down the street
Yeah.
to buy, and those were all residential properties. So even though they're converting to commercial, they were residential at one time.
Except for the ones that this body and city council turned down, which have been fairly significant number.
Yeah.
So, holding the line. But also, outside the peninsula, we could probably say 0 displacement because you're required to be a owner occupied for all of that area, anywhere outside. Actually, everywhere outside the peninsula, and then a lot of the peninsula as well.
And I've also been told by people who built ADUs, converted them to the STRs, market changed. I mean, there was not a need for them, so.
I look at that list and all those that you just had on that last slide. I mean, those are all, it's great to have every one of them, but yeah, none of this really has resulted in anything where it was sort of intended to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Or not solve it.
Yeah, the number
Mitigate.
generated
Yeah.
are not meeting the need.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I think for me, I think depressingly, what it tells us is that really we can do all we can, but the market generates so much of what gets built
Yes.
and how much the costs are. And, and I think that's why, to Christopher's point earlier, what the city's doing to try to do this at scale, have more control over what gets built, to be the permitter and basically the city's gonna go about entitling all this property,
Designing
it, doing all the developers' hard legwork. Maybe that is the
Maybe the answer is the answer.
The process is
The only answer there is right now.
But I still think about what we entitled to the PUD on Citadel Mall with MUSC out there now with all these workers, where most of them are workforce housing people.
Yeah.
And we entitled, 20 stories on some housing.
Another topic, I said that malls
Who knows when that will ever get built
Yeah,
now?
that's not,
And that, I've also heard from a developer that because of the rent you can charge in West Ashley, it does not make financial sense to build multifamily at Citadel Mall at the present time, given the construction costs and the land costs.
Yeah. No, it's really, I know what the houses in my neighborhood rent for, $2,500 for 900 square feet that have not been renovated, and people clamor for them. Yeah, it's kind of nuts.
any other questions, or comments on this? We just like these reports, maybe quarterly, we get this. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan, what else?
Real quick, I know that, Mr. Hirsch had a question about the conservation district. And I don't have a nice little slideshow on it. We spent a number of, meetings probably 3 or 4 years ago, working on a whole new conservation district. But the reason for that requirement, that allowance for counting wetlands as open space is, it is kind of an incentive to the development community. But it is not something that increases any amount of density, because the density is all set by a highland acreage on those sites. So the highland acreage is what allows for their density. Now they can go down to no minimum lot size in those conservation districts, but they have to do that through a process where they show us the best available land on the site, the best area to build on, how they're gonna have the over 50% open space, that kind of thing. And we feel categorically that we've gotten the best developments by virtue of that code, as opposed to the conventional kind of cookie cutter developments that we get with like SR1 or just conservation zoning, standard conservation zoning that is, prevalent out in those areas in West Ashley and Johns Island.
Yeah, I see the intent there, and it just felt like the nature of property on Johns Island, it was kind of found a loophole. Because there are so many lots that are 90% wet. It would normally, be undevelopable, but with that conservation district, it brought them back in for me.
And they still have to have a minimum amount of acreage. I think it's it's 10 or 15,
10
yeah.
acres, yeah.
So, then they factor that into like the SR1, whatever it might be, but they can only put the developable units, they can only be calculated based on the amount of highland they have. So if they only have 10% of the area's highland, they aren't gonna get a lot of units there.
Yeah, the term open space is subject to interpretation. And if you were to walk those properties, you wouldn't call it open space. It's just marsh, it's wet area.
And a lot of the wetlands that we're seeing in these conservation developments is wet only in like a really rainy season. The rest of the time they are, it's only the type of plant life that's there, because they're typically all wooded. But they are considered wetlands by virtue of plant types and the occasional filling with water. So it's not like a marsh that you think of with marsh grass and things.
Yeah, not a Spartina salt marsh, but just a boggy kind of natural freshwater wetland.
I appreciate your addressing.
Yeah. So,
other comments, staff, any other input, reports, updates?
We've got a meeting coming on December 10th that's going to talk about the Sam Rittenberg study that's been undergoing. It's going to be at Citadel Mall. And we will also talk about other projects that are going on in the area, like road safety audits, Charleston County improvements near Sam Rittenberg, the updates on the redevelopment of the Ashley Landing Center. We may even have some updates on the building that is going to be new city offices off of Old Town Road. So it'll be kind of
Ingram
Road properties. So that's going to be on December 10th. I believe it's 5 to 7 is the time frame. At Citadel Mall in one of the old stores. I forget which storefront.
They call it something every year.
Yeah. So that's happening. And then we should have more updates on dates and things like that in the new year in reference to zoning ordinance and path forward on peninsula plan, things like that.
I know at city council last week, they discussed adding a kind of criteria for infrastructure to be at a certain, threshold before rezonings could be considered. Has that ever been discussed in the planning commission at this level?
We have not yet. We just got the county's amendment on that. I will say it is a very draconian amendment. It will put a huge chilling effect on new development in this region. Because the amount of stuff it requires, first off, for small property owners, they won't be able to do it at all. They've got to get all these letters of coordination from different utility providers, things like that. I understand the thought process on it, that it is about trying to make sure that roads and things like that are in place. But I don't know if the system that we have in the Charleston area and South Carolina and all like that is going to be able to handle that type of requirement for rezoning and not have people, completely throw their hands up.
But was that based on a certain amount of density of the project?
It's an
too?
increase in density if it's an increase in density. Now, what I think is a better thing to look at is what does your comprehensive plan say? Are you requesting something that's in line with your comprehensive plan? And that might be something that is more in line with, not having as draconian an effect. And I think in the end, the county probably won't end up adopting what you're seeing because the realtors are going to get involved, the development community. Because again, I know everybody feels like we're getting overdeveloped, but our numbers are way down from what they've been. And I think we're seeing, that there's an impact from that. And
I think people are just worried about development with no infrastructure,
With
but then when we
roadway.
build the infrastructure, that's
Absolutely.
actually a circle, it's a
Absolutely.
road to nowhere.
And
So
and that's why
it's a conundrum.
sales tax thing is so important that it be done right, which we've been spending a huge amount of time on over the last year. And that's going to be a huge rollout to get that approved and hopefully get approved. Because
Sounds like that bridge to nowhere. Magnolia's moving along.
Magnolia is moving along.
Okay.
It's moving along. They're spending, I think they said 5 million a month over there or something like that. I mean, just the amount of money that these developments it takes to get them going now is unbelievable.
Any other updates? Anything else we need? I appreciate that. Yeah. Any questions from commission members, comments? We appreciate it. Is there a motion to adjourn? So saying, I'm assuming we're unanimous on that.
Future question.
Yeah, it's
Great one.